Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why new Mazdas are not selling. Before we get into this video though, a couple disclaimers. So first off, I'm filming this video at the Tim Daly Mazda here in Southtown, and they do not approve of or endorse this video whatsoever. I just drove on their lot and I'm filming this video without any permission. However, if you are looking for a new Mazda, I'll include a link to their inventory in the description down below. One of my friends actually just purchased a car from them, so great team. Again, they don't endorse this video though. But anyways, we're going to talk about this whole Mazda sales situation in today's video, so let's just jump right into it. So let's start things off by going over Mazda's sales figures over the course of the last, well, just over a decade. So prior to the 08 financial crisis, Mazda was actually doing really good. They had a market share that was right around 2%, and they were selling almost 300,000 cars per year. I mean, in 2007, they sold 296,000 cars. Now, once the 08 financial crisis happened, well, things dropped down quite a bit. In 2009, they sold closer to 200,000 cars. However, their market share actually jumped up to just over 2%. So they gained market share but lost volume because, well, the overall car market shrunk. But whenever the car market shrinks, people always go to more affordable cars, and well, Mazda sells more affordable cars. Now, over the course of most of the 2010s, Mazda was right around a 2% market share, and they sold, again, right around 300,000 cars per year. Now, once the pandemic hit, they actually benefited pretty greatly from the whole pandemic situation. Their market share jumped over 2%, and they had a really good year in 2021 where they sold 328,000 cars. However, in 2022, their market share decreased slightly and their volume decreased by 10%. They sold 294,000 cars. Now, so far in 2023, they've sold 53,000 cars, and so it looks like they'll probably sell slightly more cars in 2023 compared to 2022, but that's not saying much because 2022 was such a constrained year for every single automaker, so every single automaker should sell more cars this year than they did last year. Now, just to put that market share into perspective, Toyota, which is a company that people constantly compare Mazda with, has a market share that usually hovers around the 12 to sometimes 14% range, and Toyota typically sells right around 2 million cars per year, and while Toyota is also down in sales by a substantial margin. In 2022, they sold about 10% fewer cars, 1.7 million instead of the roughly 2 million that they typically sell. And then another automaker that people always compare Mazda with is going to be Honda. They're actually down by a much larger margin than is. In 2022, they're down by 32%. They sold less than 1 million cars. Honda usually sells about 1.5 million cars, and they usually have about a 8% market share, roughly. And so that just kind of puts things into perspective with overall volume compared to, again, the other automakers that people always compare Mazda to. However, I think the number that really puts everything into perspective with what's currently happening with Mazda is going to be the day supply of cars that Mazda has compared to Toyota and Honda. So the national average right now is 60 days. So what that means is that on average, most automakers would take 60 days to sell out of all of their current inventory that they have at dealerships. Mazda's number right now is at about 70 days, so they're barely above the national average in terms of their day supply, so they have slightly more cars than the average. Whereas Toyota and Honda are significantly below the national average. Honda's at a 40-day supply, and Toyota is under 30 days in terms of their supply of inventory. So again, these two automakers that sell in higher volume amounts compared to Mazda also happen to have less inventory compared to Mazda as well, because they're selling out of the cars quicker. And so let's take a quick look at Mazda's lineup to see if there's something within the lineup that maybe is pushing some buyers away. So the first car, and probably the most popular car that Mazda has, is the CX-5, which is similar in size to like a Toyota RAV4 Honda CR-V. It's their bread and butter, and it's actually a really cool car. You can get it with two different powertrains, a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder and a turbocharged 4-cylinder. It has a 6-speed automatic instead of a CVT like a lot of other crossovers in this segment. And so just a great car overall. And you guys can't see very well, but something that sets Mazda apart compared to the competition in this segment is going to be their interiors. Definitely a lot like more upscale compared to, like, again, a Honda or a Toyota. Now, Mazda's next car is going to be the CX-50, which is pretty much the same size as the CX-5, and so it pretty much is just a CX-5, but it's slightly more expensive than the CX-5 because it's apparently like the cooler, more off-roady adventure version. And then you've got the Mazda 3, which you can have in hatchback guise, or you can have in sedan guise. There's a hatchback, there's a sedan. Just like the CX-50 and the CX-5, two different powertrain options available. A naturally aspirated 4-cylinder and a turbocharged 4-cylinder. And by the way, same engines in all of these vehicles so far. And then the next one is going to be the Mazda CX-30. This is a crossover that's supposed to be basically just slightly smaller than the CX-5. It's kind of like the crossover version of the Mazda 3, if that makes sense. And by the way, same powertrain options as the CX-5, the CX-50 and the Mazda 3, and all the other stuff that applies to those cars applies to this. So again, nicer, more upscale interior compared to the competition. And something to note with these Mazdas is, although you're getting all this equipment and this nice interior, you're not paying a huge premium. I mean, this CX-30 loaded up $32,000. And then this CX-50 with a middle-of-the-line package, $34,000 roughly for the MSRP. And then this CX-5, which is kind of in like a sort of a middle line package. It's the Carbon Edition, which has this really cool interior thread stitching. $32,000 for the price on that. And then way over there, you guys can see the Mazda CX-9s. That's Mazda's 3-row SUV. So here's a closer look at those CX-9s. What you'll typically see with pricing on the CX-9 is it'll be, you know, 40,000 starting loaded up. It'll be, you know, closer to like 50,000. And then finally we have Mazda's cool little sports car, the Mazda Miata, which I'm actually a huge fan of. You can get it in a manual transmission. Now, one Mazda that is not here that'll be here soon is the new Mazda CX-90, which is supposed to kind of replace the CX-9, except it's kind of more upscale than the CX-9. That's why it's a little bit more expensive. It has more premium powertrain as well. Again, it's kind of similar to like a CX-50, as you can see here, versus a Mazda CX-5. So after taking a look at what Mazda has, I'm going to go out and say that I don't think the product is the problem. I think that Mazda has a really solid product. Again, when you look at the product and the powertrains, like, you get really solid performance, a really nice interior for similar money to the other automakers. And so Mazda's like a huge value player in all of the segments that they compete within. However, with all that being said, I do think that Mazda is having an identity crisis, and I think that this identity crisis is actually impacting their sales to an extent. So for most of Mazda's existence, we've known them as a car brand that builds like affordable, fun, sporty cars. I mean, look at the Mazda Miata. That is the definition of fun and affordable. Their old slogan used to be Zoom Zoom, right? They were known as a sporty brand. But then Mazda decided to kind of rebrand themselves as an affordable luxury brand, right? They're like, we're going to build cars that are upscale like Audis and BMWs, and they're going to have, you know, very, you know, powerful powertrains. Look at that Mazda's turbocharged powertrain, but they're still going to be affordable. However, Mazda's change kind of went unnoticed, not by car journalists like me, but by the general public, and that's because Mazda doesn't really advertise all that much. So most car brands, and car brands like Toyota and Honda, spend over $1 billion per year in advertising. Mazda spends closer to $100 million per year in advertising. Now, does Mazda sell a tenth of the cars of Honda and Toyota? No, you don't get a dollar per dollar return on advertising. But advertising is super important for letting people know about your car brand, but it's also really important for letting people know that you're rebranding your car brand. And that's what Mazda, you know, did. And, you know, the general public doesn't really know that. And this whole situation is happening yet again because Mazda is now trying to rebrand as kind of like a luxury off-roader brand, because like, look at the CX-50. Mazda basically says, hey, this is luxury like the CX-5, but it's more off-roady. I mean, they have the Meridian Edition, which nobody knows about this car. It's a really cool car. It's a CX-50 with like off-road tires. It's got over 8 inches of ground clearance. You can get it with like a rack on the top, all this cool stuff. But again, nobody really knows about this rebranding because Mazda doesn't advertise. However, although the whole advertising and rebranding situation is definitely impacting Mazda, what I also see as a big impact is the fact that Mazda doesn't currently offer any hybrid vehicles here in the US. Toyota and Honda sell a ton of hybrid vehicles, and those models are extremely popular with their buyer base. And well, Toyota and Honda's buyer base also kind of overlaps with Mazda's buyer base as well. And so that is definitely a missed opportunity for Mazda. I think that Mazda should have some hybrid powertrains here in the US market. Even if they want to put like a more performance-y spin on them, having hybrid powertrains would help them out a massive amount. There are a lot of buyers that are not Mazda buyers anymore because they can't get a hybrid from Mazda. And Subaru has the same situation. Like, Subaru could sell more cars if they made hybrids. So here's what I think Mazda could do to help increase the amount of cars that they sell and help them gain a bit of market share, especially market share from Toyota and Honda. So first off, there needs to be more brand awareness with Mazda. A lot of people don't know what Mazda is building at this point. And so, yes, I don't think that they need to spend $1 billion plus in advertising money, but they should probably spend more than $100 million per year. And, you know, they could also leverage social media to help out quite a bit. Nissan's done this a massive amount over the last few years, and it's benefited Nissan tremendously. Nissan sells far more cars now than they have for quite some time. And a big part of that is because Nissan has done a lot of social media marketing, working with social media people, all that kind of stuff. Now, the next thing that Mazda Mazda should do is, you know, change some stuff with their cars. Not dramatic stuff, but like hybrid powertrains. I think that should be a thing because, again, those are super popular, Toyota and Honda, and Mazda has a lot of crossover with buyers that are comparing them to Toyota and Honda, and the fact that Mazda doesn't have a hybrid powertrain definitely hurts them. And, you know, one thing I will say in this video that I don't like about the modern Mazdas is the infotainment system. It's not a touchscreen. Mazda should stop going on the we're not going to do a touchscreen thing. I just don't understand it. They should also have touchscreens in their cars, and with Mazda's more performance-oriented models, like the Mazda 3 turbo hatchback, they should offer a manual transmission. Manual transmissions have become a lot more popular recently, and so I think that, you know, Mazda has a great manual transmission in the Miata. I'm sure they could, you know, tune that and make it work in something like the Mazda 3. I mean, let me know in the comment section below how many of you would buy a manual transmission Mazda 3 turbo hatchback. I think a lot of you would be super excited about that car. And speaking of performance, I also think that Mazda needs to just pick a brand identity. They need to decide if they're either about performance, if they're about luxury, if they're about off-road stuff. Like, they're all over the place right now. And so I think they need to just like pick a brand identity and then kind of like stick with that. Are you the Zoom Zoom Mazda, or are you the super nice interior for not a lot of money Mazda? Like, they need to pick a direction. So overall, Mazda is definitely not in a bad position whatsoever. They're doing really good as an automaker overall. However, if they do want to take their sales to the next level and be more competitive with Honda and Toyota, then, you know, some changes need to be made to their product, slight changes. The overall product's really good. And on top of that, they need to just let more people know about their product. There's not enough people that know about like how good Mazda is. Yes, there's people like me that review the cars and let more people know about them, but like, Mazda's just they got to do a little bit more on the advertising side of things. And, you know, I want you guys to let me know in the comment section down below why you haven't purchased Mazda, if you haven't purchased Mazda, especially if you've purchased a Toyota and Honda. Like, why did you purchase a Toyota or Honda over a Mazda? That would be very interesting to see. And I did purchase a Toyota last year as a Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro. The reason I purchased that over any Mazda, especially like the CX-50 Meridian, is because it's like a real like off-roader. Like, if Mazda really wants to appeal to like off-road enthusiasts like me, they need to build a real off-roader. And then when it comes to like performance cars, the thing that's kept me from purchasing a performance Mazda is I wanted like a turbocharged Mazda with a manual transmission. That's just me as a car enthusiast. Again, I understand that's not a huge market, but yeah, let me know your thoughts. See ya.